Hello, everybody, and welcome to this performance SRE, mostly modern performance panel, when we are going to be discussing, answering some questions, and I'm going to be grabbing some information for the audience, from the audience. If you want to ask one question to keep these things order, even as now we have new fancy wireless microphones and we can just fly around with them. I don't want to be flying around all over the room, and to give equal chances to everyone here to ask your questions and to everyone there to ask your questions, we have slido.com. Please log in into the page. Won't ask you any login, won't ask you anything. Just type the number that you see here, or if you are watching, you may be seeing here on the screen or on that corner, I'm not sure which one, and you can submit your answers. I am going to be reading them and asking our dear panelists to figure out what are their perspectives. If anyone would be so kind to send a test so that I can send many tests, doesn't matter. While you do that, let me introduce the panelists. We have, in no particular order, just who I have next to me, Antonio Jimenez. Mind introducing yourself?
Sure, thank you, Leandro. Hi, my name is Antonio Jimenez. I'm working right now as a Z performance engineer. I've been working in the area for about 18 years, not fully performance engineer, but kind of some part of that time.
And we have Anna Hagelman.
Anna Eigenmann.
Eigenmann. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's good.
Yeah, my name is Anna Eigenmann. I'm from Switzerland, and I work at PostFinance, which is a Swiss bank. I'm working there as a lead data engineer in a test automation and enabling team.
Thank you. And still, we get women in the performance panel, which I am happy and very happy to see women in the audience. Yes, women in performance. And this is probably not the best post, but I really appreciate that we have a good representation. And last, we have Kaushal Dalvi. Amigo Kaushal.
Hey everyone, my name is Kaushal Dalvi. I've been in the performance space for about last 20 years. And currently I lead the performance and resiliency group at a company called UKG. It's a HR, payroll, workforce management company.
Excellent. So don't be shy with your questions. Please submit. I got several tests. Thank you, everyone. Thank you if you're watching online. And before we start to give some opportunity to the questions, I would like to ask the panelists, what have you seen this past year? Because we have been in some conferences, a few of us are back. What new things do you think this year has brought in terms of performance, optimization, user experience? What do you see? Who wants to go first?
I can take a stab at it.
Please.
So over the past year, two things that popped up in my mind immediately, things that I've seen are the barrier of entry, the barrier to entry in performance is reducing drastically. Earlier, it used to be that you have to do month-long courses and boot camps and whatnot to start becoming a performance engineer. And then you had to be a performance engineer for 5 years until people started taking you seriously. This was 20 years ago. That is one thing that I'm starting to see, that the mindset is changing. It's not like, oh, it's a group thing that only a special group of people do. It's kind of an expectation now that performance is part of the definition of done. So everyone needs to start doing it. There are a lot of developer-friendly tools that make it accessible to all of engineering, not just performance engineers. And I've started to see a lot of talks, and I've included some of it in my tutorials as well. But that was one major interesting thing that I saw.
Great. Anyone else?
I mean, I can add to this that at my company, we noticed that developers have asked for solutions where they can check for performance early in the development stages. So that's really what you just said. And I see that this is a shift that has happened as companies, even in banking, we're moving more towards continuous integration and trying to implement best practices in all areas of this development process. And performance has become more and more one of them, also in early stages.
I am very happy to hear that.
I
Antonio?
agree with Bob. I think so many tools has arisen in the past years. I think something that has also helped us to increase the visibility is the observability. The tools that now we have to observe, see traces, has helped us to understand what's happening underneath. And I think that's also a key tool for people that is coming to the area to understand what happens on the background or the backstage. And that is helping us a lot nowadays.
Yeah, I do agree with the perspectives. On my side, I have seen a lot of the integration with observability. There's still some, it's like these testers and developers, we don't touch that, you don't touch mine. And with observability, I noticed that many organizations like, the Grafana's, the Dynatraces, the App Dynamics, that's for all the operations people, all the infrastructure, we won't touch it. Your performance, I mean, I give sometimes a pass to testers to not to do that or to think that, but performance engineers, we would get a huge benefit from that. And another one that I want to bring is like this movement towards services, that the automations, thankfully, are not anymore like in the past, so much end-to-end multi-step trying to reverse engineer the solution, where raise your hands if you took so long to figure out a correlation because you had so many steps. Hands.
Hands, feet, everything.
Anyone in the audience that were having trouble with correlations and so long automations? That were not agile, were really fragile, if you ask me. I used to call even some of those the diva scripts because like you just rebooted the server and they don't work anymore. They were so fragile. So I'm happy to see that you have some of the perspectives. I don't see any questions yet. If you want to ask or send anything, we will be happy to discuss, try to answer. Please don't be shy. Whatever problems that you have had, some things that you would like a recommendation. And speaking of problems, I'm curious, what's an interesting problem that you have faced recently in the performance testing efforts that you have been doing for the past year or recently that you can think of? Or what's the most interesting one? Kaushal's already raising the eyebrows.
Let me start then.
Okay.
I think the most challenging, what happens is sometimes infrastructure servers, persons, they know how to deploy or see production. Developers know how it works in dev environment. But when we are just having a special environment for testing, nobody knows how exactly it works. So it's challenging to connect the interfaces, bring all the services together for the big test. I mean, we have shifting left, but also we have integration testing. So what happens is there is no documentation. You need to ask too many questions to many teams to understand what's happening with the environment, and then you understand the application, understand how it works. And it helps a lot, especially when you are doing root cause analysis, because if you don't know where is going through the transaction, the information coming back, coming forth, sometimes you get lost and you are not adding any value to the test.
I'm gonna +1 you on that very quickly because just before coming here, there's 2 email chains going on right now about this exact thing that I just answered and on my phone. So it's so funny that you say that right now.
Everybody getting similar situations. Anna?
Well, I think it's a bit to what you just said. It's to bring observability to the different stages and really democratizing that information, that data can give us. So me, since I'm coming more from the data side of things, it's one of my goals to enable as many teams as possible to bring at all stages of development the data, to a point where it can be accessed by a lot of people, and that we can also not do the shift left, but also the shift right. So learn from what's happening in production and loop that back.
It's interesting that most of the challenges that you are having are around like convincing concepts or teaching our organizations. The one that I am going to share is my biggest challenge has been lately convince why we shouldn't be obsessing about virtual users or the number of people that we can fit inside of a system. Because in modern cloud, microservice, or service-oriented solutions, that doesn't matter that much anymore. The number of users, your API can be, I don't know, in Timbuktu in a data center, or here in LA, or in London in another data center for the same solution. And it could be spawning up, being destroyed. So understanding that concept, that what you want to know mostly is how many transactions your system can take on the different components, rather than how much people can I put. It's critical, but tool vendors still want to have a metric to charge for, right?
It's not virtual users anymore, it's virtual requests, right?
Yeah. I like that term. Oh, I'm gonna take it. And yeah, if you're scandalized by virtual users are dead, yeah, it's a term that we are still using. The tools that we use are still picking up on them, but get your head out of the virtual user thing. It's not how many users, it's how much activity can our environments take.
Yeah, because the microservice architecture has basically split up the applications in a way that now we shouldn't think of users themselves anymore, but split them up too, so that it becomes actions instead, right?
Yep.
So it's like one abstraction layer higher, you could say, to match the new architecture.
Okay, while you process the virtual user situation, we have now several questions. I'm really happy. And the first one is a classic. How do you get buy-in from management that performance testing is important and necessary? Anyone there's two?
So I do a tutorial for performance, and this is literally the first 3 slides that we talk about in that tutorial. So there's many different ways to slice and dice that problem. Typically what happens is when there is an issue, when there is a fire, that's when everyone is aware. That's when everyone is thinking about performance. But it dies down after 2 weeks, and then everyone has kind of moved on until the next fire happens. If you're always thinking about performance only in the firefighter mode, you're not going to build that muscle and get that continuous improvement that is needed. So a different way to look at it is to show the business value overall. The cost of performance, cost of fixing performance after the fact is usually typically much worse than a functional issue, because it will probably involve major or architectural changes. And there are many other factors that are advantageous, such as it helps you in decision making, it helps you in capacity planning, it helps you in retaining customers, having referenceable customers. So making those advantages visible to management and product managers to also show out performance is a differentiator when it comes to if functionalities are equal, performance is going to be the differentiator. That is exactly how Google ranks their search results as well. If all else is equal about 2 sites, the one that is more performant with Web Core Vitals is going to be ranked higher. So there's a business aspect to it as well.
If it's not performant, it becomes a risk too, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. I liked a lot that warning, like, hey, do you want to be high in Google? You'd better perform. That's a very good one. Just quick parentheses. We have a lot of questions now. If you want to prioritize one, vote for them. Put the thumbs up, like and subscribe. No, that's another thing. Activate the bell. And you can upvote if you are interested into hearing from the panel one of the questions out there as well. If you're watching through the streams, you can post your question and get it answered by the panel. So more perspectives, how do you sell it up?
Well, I think the most important thing is evangelize not only your stakeholders or your client, also developers, also infra people, because at the end, everybody relies on performance testing. If you have a bad performance or poor performance,
Wait. I'm going to interject now. Management, because if management is not supporting this evangelization, you first need to evangelize management.
I have some thoughts to add there, which I heard from another tutorial yesterday. I think it was from Mike, measures and metrics. And I really liked his approach that was called GQM, goal, questions, metrics. But I feel like instead of metrics, you can also interchange that with anything technical, to be honest. And the approach is that you should first formulate your goal together with your stakeholders, so in that case, management. So together, technical and management, formulate those questions, and there you can really have the focus and you know what you want to do, and they're on board with you, and then tell them, okay, let me handle the rest. So I really like that approach that he mentioned there. And I feel like it's applicable to performance too.
Now I'm going to jump with my trick. Do we know what is the language that managers understand the best? Anyone there's too? Yeah, the money. So generally, when presenting this type of situations to management, I come by quickly by, first, I have to say my rant. Performance testing is not the same as load testing, okay? With that, set it clear. You come to management and tell them like, hey, señor manager, question, how much would it cost to our team or the company if this was slow, if this was unavailable? How many losses? How much would it cost to fix it? How much impact will it have? How many customers will we lose? Sales, productivity? Put a number. I'm just coming with my ideas, but I want to hear a number from you. And initially, I kind of wait until them kind of process and try to pull up and show all the perspectives. It's not only server cost, lost user cost, lost sale cost, reparation, trying to fix it. You may even get sued. You may even get legal problems. So big picture. It can get ugly, nasty. How much would it cost to do some performance testing? No, but we don't have money for servers and all the load generator. No. Performance. You don't have to load test, only load test to assure that a solution is performant. You can do several things. Just do release techniques. A/B testing. I forgot the colors. Red, blue? No, blue, green. Blue, green releases. Those that generate ones in Facebook just release into production without doing load tests. Yeah, because if there's any problem, they are monitoring, they're observing rollback. There are ways, Mr. Manager. Check the cost of what you picture of all these problems popping up and just put a number on what you want to invest in performance. And I'm sure it's way, way smaller. That sells it, and my experience. I would recommend scare them with money.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think especially if there has been an outage before,
Oh yeah,
and you can measure how much you lose, you can take that as part.
Yeah, so it's like an insurance. When you haven't had any accident and you didn't have it and you don't know what can go wrong. But when it happens, they come shouting and screaming, please, performance. Next question. Again, it's upvoted. I saw another one earlier, but keep the votes. Thank you. Performance testing in production. Can it work successfully? What is your experience?
So we just started doing a little bit of that. But when I hear performance testing in production, there's two things that come to mind for me. The traditional performance tests or load tests or any other subtype of a performance test that you're thinking of can be done if you have a certain level of maturity where you can ensure that If there are impacts, that you have the ability to stop the load test, not let the blast radius increase unnecessarily. But building that level of maturity, I don't know if it provides that level of return. You need to have a few other things in your application and infrastructure first. So some other ways to invest in that are feature flags, and like you said, the ability to do blue green, the ability to control the level of traffic.
Two words. Rollback.
Rollback, yeah. If you have these capabilities, you can do feature flags, you can do AB, you can control the level of traffic going to a new service versus an old service, and the ability to roll back. Now you can do performance testing in production all the time, because you turn on a feature flag, you send only 5% of the traffic to it. You observe how this 5% is doing versus the other 95%. Oh, it's not looking good. Roll it back, bring the other 5%, make changes, make fixes. Now roll it out to 1% of the traffic, and then slowly go all the way. So that's where I see a lot of the folks that I talk to in other organizations as well. They're investing heavily in feature flags and these 4 features to be able to get a better idea of performance directly in production.
The other way is to do observability to get performance indicators. And if you have something like use OpenTelemetry, timestamps will give you good performance indicators. And I think it's important because that's also, you want to know what is your baseline, right? And you want to also know how you set your performance thresholds on the other stages. And that's one cheap way to get it. Right?
I agree with both. I think it's a maturity level. If your company or you are developing all the assets as a performance engineer that help you to reach that level, you are in a good position to do that. If not, probably many things can go wrong, and
They will.
They
They
will be
will
wrong.
go wrong.
So you need to be careful.
Is that Murphy's Law?
Yeah. And I have heard multiple examples. Earlier today, we were talking about a friend of ours that an airline in South America, they are testing in production all the time. And I definitely recommend it. I would be scandalized if an organization is not doing it nowadays. But again, performance tests, no load tests, not the BALTs, I call BALT, big ass load tests. The ones that you have to save for Taylor Swift's Black Fridays. No, I don't mean those. As you were saying, smaller. You can even generate a decent amount of load that might be slightly scary, but yeah, you're not wanting to bring down production. Even in this airline, they are bringing down production here and there. Just it becomes a mix of chaos engineering with performance testing, because you want to check how your productive environments are doing. But critical, you have to be listening into what happens with your tests. You have to be careful. Don't, oh yeah, the panel in Star Wars told me to start hitting production mindlessly. No, don't go around and do that in your organizations. You have to put some guardrails. What about the data, right? We're testing data, productive data. Well, just create a little bucket of non-productive data inside of production and slam it. Don't be worried about that. Fake IDs, fake users that you can keep playing with. And so many techniques, the list of techniques that you can do. And I would even say, like these people in Facebook or in Amazon or all the big tech ones, they release into production without too much load testing, like the big ones, and they just keep checking. Because if you have the right techniques, you're real flesh users. I remember in the old days, like, what? Are you going to have a room full of people clicking at the same time? Nowadays, we can. Beta users, just send it to the small city that uses your app or your solution with Blue-Green or with some of these techniques. They can be load testing. You are monitoring, you have rollbacks. Oh, that's getting slow. Back. This thing that we just released, roll it back, and you will be in a very good shape. But absolutely, yes, test production, please. Get rid of that taboo, that afraid or scared, the boogeyman. Ooh, no, not anymore. We don't have it. Okay, We have another interesting question that made me twitch my head a little bit, like when you talk to your pet. How are you tackling environmental availability for performance testing? I don't know if this is eco-friendly or more environments. Take it as you want.
I would say that, as you mentioned, Balt, yeah, doing load testing that has no purposes, you are just wasting resources at the end. Because load test you are using a large infrastructure, you are doing many things that probably are wasteless. If you don't have a purpose to do a load testing, don't do it, because it doesn't matter if you are doing something like that. I will say that also when you are doing performance testing, you are testing a pod, a sweet pod, that probably is the one that you are going to be scaling up. And that sweet spot probably is the one that has the best consumption resources, because it doesn't matter if you, well, it matters if you have a larger pot, right? Because it has more resources. But the idea is to have a balance between the resources and the consumption. And in that area, you may have a lot of impact, because it doesn't matter if you have a large one, but you are using poor resources. So I think that will be something that could impact at the end in the environmental.
Any other takes?
Funny thing is, I have a group of friends from the last 20 years who all of us started out in the performance space. We get together every once in a while and talk about what's going on. The two main topics this time around were Gen AI was number one, and the consistent topic that has been a pain point for everyone all the time has been environments. Invariably, all of the times, number one problem is the environment. So one other thing that we tried to do was, environments are getting complicated. Systems are getting complex. Earlier, at least it was possible. You had physical boxes, monoliths, and you could recreate environments 1:1. At this point, even if there is will, even if people want to invest in it, just the fact that there's microservices and containers and serverless and multi-cloud and you have third-party providers, it's almost becoming impossible to create an exact replica of a production environment. So one kind of trick that worked for us was, we had a scaled down environment, and we kept taking constant readings on the scaled down environment with every build and observing what's happening with it in production. So over a period of time, an extrapolation formula emerged out of that. So even if we did not have like the best 1:1 match production environment, that extrapolation formula was strong enough to be a good predictor of, let's apply this build here, see what happens. If we see X here, it's probably going to result into Y in the real world.
I dare you to create a replica of Amazon's production environment. Yeah, that's nonsense. We shouldn't be trying to do that anymore. Any other takes before I?
No, gone.
So I do agree with some with all the points that were presented. Especially, again, it's going to go back a lot to confusing performance testing with load testing. I have seen so many organizations every sprint trying to cramp up like the biggest, largest load test that they can every sprint. And the resources that they are putting on that, if I use those computer resources, probably I would have a good amount of Bitcoin mined by now, which spinning up so many load generators just because. And some of them are running these tests in elastic environments where their cloud consumption, server power, heat, and probably coal and every environmental thing that we have seen that gets pretty ugly and nasty, goes to the roof every sprint. And yeah, I think that's a big waste when organizations are confusing what they should be doing on modern performance. And again, I'm going to go to my manager point. How about your wallet? How is the cloud bill for those continuous hyper huge load tests that you are doing? Your CPU cycles, how much are you paying for that? I'm sure it's way more than you should be paying. So you could be optimizing a lot of this just by monitoring, making sure smaller tests as you do your sprints, and especially cherry on top, many organizations that are still trying to automate scripts that are end-to-end in the front end, and not to mention the browser automations for load testing. Those require even more resources to be executed. You need more load generators for those instead of a tiny little API call. I just saw Aladdin, a tiny little lamp. So some of those you can make leaps of efficiency if you're worried about the environmental or environments. You don't have to spin up the whole environment anymore. As I said, bringing up the whole Amazon production, it's unthinkable. What they do, just spawn an instance of the microservice that you are checking, as Kaushal said, compare it to what you had to the previous version on the instance, or that you were continuously checking, that there's no degradation. You don't need a humongous load test anymore continuously. You still need it for the big events.
It goes back to observability, right? When you have the historical data to compare it to, that already tells a lot.
Cherry on top if you are truly agile, because yeah, we are agile, but we release to production every 6 months. That's not so agile. Agile, if you release into production at least once a month, you pay attention to what is happening in production, and you can do rollbacks, then I bow to you, you're agile. Otherwise, you may be trying only.
Oh, you're being generous. I wouldn't even give a month.
I thought I was
What would
being
you
mean.
2 weeks. maybe?
Yeah, well, 2 weeks is, but at least once a month, at least. Anyone here knows how many times those Amazon releases to production per hour? I see a few of you smiling. Last I heard, it was in the thousands per hour to
That's crazy.
production. That's the way. Okay, we have another common question, but I love that it's presented in a new light. Are there interesting new tools, or is it mostly the same meter, etc.? I think it was JMeter, but have you heard of
Well.
any interesting? Go on.
I've heard of some tools, yes. K6, I think, is a very good tool. It's programmatic. It's easy to download and to set up and all of that. Yeah, have good experience with that one.
Absolutely. You took away my number one answer, K6. So the next one I'll also mention is called Artillery, artillery.io. The benefit of that is the getting started cost is so low. An extremely simple YAML file, 9 lines of not even code configuration can get you started with a proper performance test.
Yeah, I will say that there are two divisions in the tools, like the ones that go more in the developer or developing code, like K6, Gatling, Locust. Even JMeter has a JMeter DSL, which is only for developing code. And there are other tools that rely on the UI, like Neoload, JMeter. So it might depend. If you have more like a developer background, these tools that has a command line, or you can write the script from the scratch in a notepad, are really easy to get familiar. But if you have more like a background in probably tools in UI, Neoload, JMeter, even Load Runner has UI and also the part that you can do the coding. So it depends which background do you have, the adoption of the tool that you may have.
But the question was new one. What's the new thing? Because you bring Load Runner. I'm like, what? Nothing wrong with that. But
It's a
what's
new
the
version
new
of
one?
Yeah, sorry. Probably Gatling will be. It has been for a while, but no, I think K6 will be the latest one in the field.
I am a little surprised that no one thought outside the box and seeing other perspectives in performance. Automation. Okay, here's mine. Open telemetry. And it's something that many organizations are not paying that much attention or thinking, oh, that's for infrastructure, that's for DevOps teams, that's performance gets so much benefit if you get OpenTelemetry, your solutions instrumented by default. It would be like saying, hey, I need to know how fast can my car go. It doesn't have a speed meter. It doesn't come with any instrumentation. The only way to know, raise it. Put an automation and put it to its limit. And that's how we are thinking of our solutions nowadays. If the car comes out of the factory with a meter and some specifications can tell what happens, we will know live, or not only live in production. If the application is instrumented, we will know the performance of it in the developer's machine. If they are creating new code that doesn't perform, it will light up like a Christmas tree light bulb right away. And because one thing that I feel many organizations are stuck up on are these solutions that performance, hit, automate, hit, load, the usual keywords that we have been told and sold. If you want not OpenTelemetry because it's too programmatic, too technical, blah, get an agent with an APM. Get some visibility, install it not only in production, install it everywhere and have the metrics understand what is the performance. I think those are the new ones that I didn't bring up the agents for the APMs right away because, yeah, those have been around, believe it or not, for at least 5 years. Powerful ones. APMs where application performance monitoring is not monitoring anymore, it's management. OpenTelemetry is a new technology that is taking over everything. And as performance engineers, if you are not like pinching your team developers, like, hey, can we get OpenTelemetry? Can we get something of this in our software? You are doing things backwards, like the environmental thing. I think you are wasting resources just thinking on load testing rather than quickly, this story. 2 guys standing on the side of a river, and there's a guy, a little kid drowning, and they run and save the kid. They get out, and there's another kid drowning. And then they run and save 2 kids drowning, and then suddenly one of them steps away, and the other one's like, "Dude, the kid's drowning. What are you doing? Where are you going? Where?" I'm gonna go upstream to see who's the effer who is throwing kids in the water. That's how we should be thinking about performance. And OpenTelemetry brings a little bit of that.
So I'm going to jump on your bandwagon for OpenTelemetry. I was talking about the barrier to entry for performance tools being lowered. Even with OpenTelemetry agents, the barrier to entry is literally 3 environment variables. And you restart your process with an agent. That is the level of change that is needed. No code changes, no nothing. It will automatically start pulling out a ton of meaningful data from your application. It literally takes 5 minutes to add 3 environment variables, restart your process with one OpenTelemetry agent.
I mean, those 3 variables, you have also like the backend database and some visualization, but just implementing the change on your code, it can be fairly easy. And with the client libraries and some of these things can go pretty easily. And very well said, not only performance metrics, you will get a plethora of information, functional utilization, usage patterns, all sorts of crazy things that you will get.
Yeah, what function has been called, how many times, the timestamps, right, for each span. So that's how you can get then the performance measurements out of it for free.
Right away, no automations, no coding, nothing.
All the profiling.
Yeah. So it's interesting. None of the experts were thinking like performance. And when it was brought up, we're like, oh yeah, oh damn, how could I have forgotten? And that happens everyone in every organization. So beware, those are cognitive biases that the tool vendors have trained us very well. Now, another very interesting one. What are your thoughts on micro benchmarking? I love that question.
By micro benchmarking, do you mean like
Because I can
load
take it
unit
2
testing?
different ways, yeah.
Okay, which ones?
Micro benchmarking could be extremely small benchmarks that you run, like you were trying to explain earlier, that you don't need to run the giant load test. Yes, and we have tried that. It provides value. You get a set of readings that you compare with production, and you're able to create a correlation formula. That is one way to look at the micro benchmark, but uh, another way could be to just slice off a part of the system, now that it's so easy to do that with microservices or just broken up applications, and make sure that individually each of those are performant up to a certain contract, just like you do pack testing and functional testing. And if all contracts are being satisfied, then overall you can be reasonably comfortable about the level of performance of the system. So I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Which way are you
both I
thinking of?
think go into the same line.
I have helped some developers to set up in her own computer an environment that they can do in shifting left, doing load unit testing. At the end, they mock up the data and they test their services. Once that they are comfortable with the response times, SLAs, SLOs, they can push the code to integration system environment. So that's a good practice, but not many developers are aware about it. So I would say that as many developers are aware that they can do this benchmarking in their own computers, it will be much better because they will push into code, more reliable code that at the end will be only tested as a whole unit. So I will say this is something that it's coming, or I can see more awareness in developers, but I will say it's still kind of not that mature.
Yeah, I I think this micro benchmarking, I generally preach for everyone to do Chihuahua-sized load tests, tiny little puppies, where yeah, what you get are these metrics. You can get them continuously. You can run these tests. It's a tiny Chihuahua little puppy. You wouldn't notice if it's running underneath the chairs. You can throw it in production. You can throw it on a developer's machine. You can ask a developer to program for it, and you get constant metrics. The little things are shaking all the time, and they're giving you some information about the system. I love this. I never heard it as micro benchmarking.
Yeah.
I like the term a lot, a little bit more commercial than Chihuahua sized. But yeah, it's super important that you get this continuous information. Your personal devices, your watches are getting your heartbeat continuously. You don't need to be running a marathon to get the heartbeat and check how are you. It's not something intense that you have to do to get.
Yeah, it's a good analogy.
Yeah, I mean, it's you don't need to be linking always again, and this might sound repetitive. It's not only load testing, and in agile modern times, as Antonio was saying, you can just quickly spin up the microservice, hit it a little bit, check how it is doing. Good. Did we agree that this thing was going to take only half a second? If it was above, probably wouldn't be moved towards production. Yeah, be quickly efficient, environmentally friendly, because you quickly spin up, test, spin down. You can go, senor, to production, keep moving on the pipeline. I think that is one of the best things that you can do. And if you do this micro benchmarking everywhere, almost every API, every environment that you have, as your code moves towards production, you have comparison points. Micro benchmarking. I would run one every minute, every 5, every 10. Dev environment, staging environment. As the code moves, since you were running every time or so this process, and the new change or the new code is moving through, you have those metrics to compare to. What Anna was saying earlier, you can do those comparisons. Kaushal, you had the formula as well that you were seeing, like, hey, can I move this towards? So yes, micro benchmarking, awesome name, and please keep doing.
I have a question to Kaushal, if I may. So you mentioned that you have this, you figured out like a formula that crystallized out from one development stage to production. What did you use as input? Was it just the performance from one stage, or did you use other input features?
So originally it started out as very rudimentary for each different transaction, it was a little different. So it was not one size fits all, just over a period of time through taking everything and putting it in an Excel sheet and coming up with, here we see a clear correlation pattern that if this is X, production is X by 2. In some other places, it was a different type of pattern that emerged. So we just kept collecting all of that. But now with the advances that we have in ML and AI services, that is what we are trying to do. We are trying to feed some of our historical data to see could we have come up with better formulas than what we came up with manually, and we are starting to see some of that.
Micro benchmarking is delicious food for learning models and all this. I shouldn't be taking vodka.
Am I allowed to? Quick.
Mhm.
I'm just asking, like,
Mhm.
am I allowed to speak or?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was my question. Then I just want to give an example where we implemented that. And it started with, so it's a mix of what you said and what you said. So
Okay.
It starts with, when you run your load test for maybe for the first time, or you have like an average idea of how your services are doing in prod. That's where you're running, along with your integration test, you run that service or you hit that service maybe 100,000 times in your CI/CD, and you spit out that number that, hey, for this API, when production is like giving this kind of response in that isolated environment on my Docker instance of this size, this API is giving me this response. And that will be, spit out in my Jenkins, like every time
Yeah.
there is a deployment or build.
That's a very good.
And that's where, over a time, if I see a big deviation, it gives me that early
It's an
feedback.
indicator. Yep.
And I mean, we know that load testing is really costly, right? In case if you don't have like a proper environment, this gives you like a early indication that, hey, something is off.
sure.
I'm sure you cannot 100% rely on that number, but you should run your load test, because, and then when you have that, microservice architecture where you're like hundreds of microservice, if one of them is like, behaving oddly, that gives you a good indicator that we should do a full cycle kind of thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And
Yeah,
I am
good point.
super happy to hear that it's being implemented. We are not crazy and we are doing the right things.
I have done it, but haven't repeated it. It's only one organization where we did that, with obviously developer self as well, but it's really hard to.
Not everyone wants to take that. Okay, we're gonna do, I think we may have time for 2 or 3 more questions. Both for them, we are trying to get the most interesting to you answered. But what we have on top is an easy one. What is blue-green? What is this thing? Anyone wants to tackle this one? I don't think it take too
I
long.
don't know if I have the technical definition of it exactly, but I'll try to explain it like I was talking to a friend. If you have a deployment mechanism where, let's say you have your production, and let's give it a starting color for right now, blue. Your production environment looks blue. What if you had another environment and you called it the green environment, and you had the ability to deploy a newer version of the code to the green environment, and the ability to transfer the traffic and everything smoothly over from blue to green without the user feeling any changes, no URL changes or any other external changes, and avoiding downtime completely, so that it is completely, from the user's perspective, nothing happened. And now your blue version is free. So the next version of code goes over there and you bring the traffic over here now. You keep doing that dance over and over again, and that's your blue-green.
Something to keep in mind, this is a release technique. There are the ways in which you can release into production to stay up all the time, and at the same to check the new changes that they are not breaking. As Kaushal, if I understand it well, the green one is like the traffic light, green, you're okay to go, it's safe, it's a good environment. And you generate a blue variant that is probably smaller, less users are gonna be entering to it. So you have like a beta environment where you're trying this new code. Send your users there, not all of them. That's a big part of this. Bless you. and you can check how the new code, the new thing is performing. It's performing well. Are we happy with it? We merge it to the green. Okay, new thing, we have the blue one. I always give the example in the 2009 10s, I remember with my brother, he would get the new version of Facebook while I had still the old one. Well, he was in the blue version and the blue release, and I was still in the green one. I'm like, I want the new one. But this is how some organizations try that. You can check the performance, and if it's safe, yeah, let's move it. Release techniques.
I think OpenAI also does that with their new models, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone gets it at the same time.
There are others, AB, Canary. I forgot there are a few more, but
Dog food dog. We used to call it dog food because we created that special environment only for the beta users.
yeah, internal users. Or if you have a solution that everyone like, try the new Gmail and be our beta testers, please. But when you sign on for that, yeah, you know that you may have something buggy, slow, laggy, whatever, but you are testing it for the team. One question direct for Anna. Interesting. Anna, I think one of your focuses is machine learning. If you met my quality team, what would you recommend we do first to improve performance? Implement machine learning?
I wouldn't say so. So first of all, I would say, yes, I do machine learning, but I'm all over data person. And I would say a lot of the times you don't have to go right away with the machine learning solution or the Gen AI solution, even though they're very cool. I love them. Everyone loves them. But performance, it really depends where you stand. So one thing that I mentioned before, I think observability is one key to start that goes towards OpenTelemetry as well. And I would say that's a really good way to start, to just make sure that on all the stages you get the info, the data out, that you feed it back to the developers, even production data ideally. Yeah, just to get like that pulse, as you said, on performance. And I mean, then you can easily do fancy stuff like Kaushal with machine learning and so on, where you try to extrapolate. I think that's really cool. I want to look more into that. I've heard about this before, but I've never tried it. Yeah, so those are the more advanced ones. But I think in the beginning, get that data out.
Yeah.
One thing I'll add there, this is something that we are doing in our org because we have a large performance team, so
Nice.
not possible everywhere. But
sure.
We have an internal framework for performance, for enabling everyone in the company to do performance testing, all the developers all the time. So we do all of the boilerplate heavy lifting work for them, like setting up the load generators, doing everything automatically. They just give us this test asset and we run it for them. But because of that, we now have access to everything that is going on. And on our internal framework, we just released this feature yesterday, where we are taking in all of the data that we have, the test scenario, the results, the historical results, and we are just providing that to Gen AI and asking it, based on all of this, are you able to find anything interesting here? Because that was the gap. Even though we had enabled all of the developers, they can't just dive into performance results and see what's going on. And what we started seeing was Gen AI is capable of looking at latencies, fine. Availability, fine. But something happened at the 12-minute, 50-second mark with this transaction. You might want to look into that. Even if I wanted to look at that, it would take me hours to sit through and sift through the data. Gen AI told me that in literally 30 seconds.
I think that's a great use of it, because a lot of people that have apprehensive about generative AI, and sometimes rightfully so, it's because it's not always 100% accurate, right? But usages like this, where it gives you suggestions, are perfect, I think, because it's a definite time saver.
Now, small scolding to Kaushal, because the question was for Anne. Nah, I'm kidding.
No.
I'm going to add up.
No, please, that's a perfect ad. I mean, you
But I do agree with you, Anna. If you don't have that data, if you are not capturing, observing, logging, tracing, metricing, I don't know if that's the term, you don't have anything to keep your AI. And if your organization is not taking those steps first, you won't get too much of a benefit. So super important that you have all those. And cherry on top, once you have that data, the capacities and possibilities of things you can do with that are huge, not only performance testing. In my sea of data that I'm getting from all this open telemetry and observability and blah, are my users more prone to buy toilet paper when they are buying beer, or how was that study? You can find all sorts of interesting information, usage patterns, when do they not like it, what is happening. So don't forget that you need the data first. If you don't have anything to train the language, you are pretty much out. But we're pretty much out of time as well. And to close up, to the panelists, do you want to give some last words to the audience out there and in here to take into account for their performance endeavors?
I guess I'll repeat the first thing that I started with. The barrier to entry is pretty low across the board. It's time for everyone to jump in.
Anna?
I would say data is your friend. It allows you to see what's happening. And it's oftentimes the first step, but also be careful because you can get a lot of data, but if you don't know how to then search it or where to store it and so on, it's also not that worth it. So you have to really set up a scalable system.
For sure, nowadays we need more performance engineers. So take the jump, try it. If you don't like it, you can go back to whatever you were before. But it's something that I have encouraged a lot of people. And what I have seen is when you are in the performance engineer area, you ended liking it, like me. So I encourage people to give it a try, and probably you're going to like it.
I think I was going to say something else. I'm still going to. But yeah, Antonio, there are not enough performance engineers, and it's well remunerated. So if that motivates anyone watching or anyone here, if you're already here, I think you have some interest, or you already agree that, yeah, you can make a good living. But yeah, I'm going to close with, again, performance testing is not the same as load testing. You shouldn't take them interchangeably. It would be like saying Microsoft Office is the same as Microsoft Word. So there are so many other components and things that you can do in performance. Make sure that you're doing them all, not only performance load testing. See, even I. Thank you very much, everyone. And please an applause to the presenters.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
everyone seeing us there back home. Thank you very much for tuning in. And this stream is about to be done. Adios, everyone. Adios, presenters. Adios to the audience.